We are here today to help a neighbor of mine who recently had an injury and is wondering what he can do with his diet, with his lifestyle to help him recover from this injury a little bit better and faster. It's annoying because you're making this great progress and then all of a sudden, boom, life hits you with something. So I said, well, tell me what your diet and what your sleep is like right now, because remember, when you sleep, that's when your body heals. And he goes, oh, well, it would help if I wasn't an insomniac. I said, well, that's where we need to start. Let's figure out why you're not sleeping, because our body's ability to heal and regenerate is at a maximum when we're sleeping. And I would say, like, over the last decade, there's been so much research on sleep that's like mind-blowing as to how important it is, not only for regenerating, but for healing from diseases and for helping you feel good energy. We are able to sleep when melatonin is high. Melatonin is a chemical that helps to induce sleep. Some of you might take melatonin and you might get more restful sleep on the nights that you take it. So your body should endogenously produce it. Endogenous meaning within. It is already within you to be able to produce melatonin, but people exogenously take it in a supplement form sometimes. Now, we got to be careful with that. We don't want to be like popping melatonin every night. But did you know that if you have the right raw materials, your body should be able to produce melatonin? So we're going to talk about what those raw materials are, because this, I think, will help a lot of people being able to sleep better. So I'm going to post a little diagram up here, and this is going to show you the pathway that creates melatonin. So it all begins with our good friend tryptophan. So you know how on Thanksgiving there's that old saying, you eat turkey, you get tired? There's some truth to it. It's not like totally true, but there's some truth to it, because turkey does have tryptophan, which is an amino acid. Amino acids are in every single piece of protein that you eat, but there are different types of amino acids, and tryptophan is one of them. Tryptophan then gets converted into serotonin, which is like that feel-good brain chemical, which then gets converted into melatonin. But for all these conversions to take place, there are certain cofactors that are required. These cofactors are found in the food that we eat. And one of the most common ones that keeps people from being able to sleep properly is magnesium. So magnesium, a lot of people have heard, oh, you need magnesium for sleep, but why? But it's because you need magnesium to convert these chemicals to ultimately produce melatonin. So magnesium is a big one, but B vitamins are also really important. So is iron, so is zinc. So all of these different vitamins and minerals are really important. So now this is gonna be specific to my neighbor, but probably very important for many of you to hear. So he was asking me about becoming vegetarian, but I would say if someone's gonna ask me what's the optimal diet, it is not a vegetarian diet, and that is a topic that is separate from this video. A plant-based diet is absolutely one of the healthiest diets you can do. There's a difference between like totally avoiding meat and including some meats, but having like a large vegetable base in your diet. I would actually suggest is if you're trying to focus and improve your sleep, I would actually not recommend a vegetarian diet. And something that I wanted to point out is I noticed, I'm going to refer to what you're eating over the course of a day. I noticed that before bed, your dinner is typically salad and fruit. Well, and then you're also saying that you usually wake up around 3 a.m. To me, this is a big blood sugar red alert. Like, okay, let's assess blood sugar. Let's just say you eat fruit before bed, which you said you sometimes do. Your blood sugar will spike if you don't have because remember, fiber, protein, and fat balance blood sugar. So if you're not having those in your dinner, your blood sugar is rising, and then it's coming down and it's crashing in the middle of the night. And it's usually right around that 3 a.m. sign. That's usually a big indicator that we have unstable blood sugar. We need to stabilize the blood sugar. And we're gonna do that with protein and healthy fats. So an ideal dinner to have before bed would be, and this is one example, I'm sure you can have other ideal dinners as well. But let's say some salmon, some dark leafy greens, which are gonna have your magnesium, a really important mineral that you need to produce melatonin, remember? So dark leafy greens have a lot of magnesium. Salmon, spinach, you could do some broccoli, you could do kale, whatever you want. Any veggies are really great. And then maybe you do like a couple slices of avocado with that, and you can do, you could do some quinoa with it, or you could do a sweet potato with it. So I'm not saying don't have carbs. I'm just saying make sure you have your protein and your healthy fat. One really, really key strategy for reestablishing your hormones so that they're conducive for sleep is pay attention to your light exposure. About an hour before bed, I would start minimizing these super bright lights in your face. Like there's a super bright light in front of me right now, but it's not an hour before bed for me right now, so I'm cool with that. I would purposely not shoot a video like this before bed because there's this bright light in my face and I don't want my melatonin to be downregulated, because what happens is when you see this bright light, you know, sunlight is obviously, you know, going to be an example of this, but an hour before bed, there's probably not sunlight, but the lights in the house actually can trick your brain into thinking that there's still sunlight. And so this light comes through your eyeballs, it, you know, hits a receptor and tells your brain, oh, it's still daytime, even though it's really not. And then your brain downregulates the melatonin. And we need melatonin to get into deep sleep, and deep sleep is when the body heals and regenerates. So you want to, I would say an hour before bed, but there's even been some like recent research that's said, hey, if you could just do even 15 minutes before bed, like that can even help, because when you get that super bright light in your face and in your eyeballs and then to your brain, basically it takes about 15 minutes for the melatonin production to be able to kick in again, according to some of the research out there. So even 15 minutes before bed, what I always do at night is I never have bright lights on. Like if I'm going over to a spot in the house that has bright lights, I'm a little OCD, but whatever. It's all my craziness. Sometimes it works. So I'll close my eyes and try not to trip, and then I'll turn off the light and just keep dim lights on. So it's not like I'm in complete darkness, just dim lights. And then on your phone, I do that little thing where you swipe down and then you turn the brightness all the way down. And those little tricks can really help, because it's pretty well known that if you got bright lights blaring in your face, then the melatonin drops off, and you need that to be able to fall asleep. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that in the morning, in the early afternoon hours, if you can, like first thing in the morning would be awesome, but as soon as you can, when you wake up, just go outside for a little walk for like 10-15 minutes. And especially in the beginning, when you're really trying to rebalance your hormone levels and your body's rhythms, doing this, like being just really diligent about it in the beginning to reset the hormones, can be really, really helpful. I'm not saying you have to do this for the rest of your life, but if you want to, it's great. It would definitely reinforce that rhythm, because our body has a natural rhythm. Another thing I think of when I hear like people are not sleeping well is your cortisol levels. So cortisol is inverse to melatonin, meaning when melatonin is high, cortisol is low. When cortisol is high, melatonin is low. So cortisol is what wakes you up in the morning. When you, naturally wake up, assuming your alarm clock doesn't go, bam, 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 or, there's no loud noises that wake you up. If your body's just naturally waking up, it's because your cortisol is rising. That's what wakes us up. And so cortisol can keep us from sleeping if it's too high, too late. A big thing that I discourage people from doing is do not work out within an hour or two of bedtime. If you're gonna work out at night, make sure it's at least 3 hours before bedtime, because when you work out, it spikes the cortisol. You can actually test this. There are tests where you like spit in tubes throughout the day. You spit in tubes 4 points throughout the day, and then you mail it in, and then they can show you your cortisol. So what should happen is cortisol should rise in the morning, then it should come in for a nice smooth landing as the day goes, kind of like a nice smooth airplane land, right? Hopefully it's smooth. But that's what the cortisol should be. But for a lot of people, that doesn't happen. Like a lot of people get an afternoon crash, and so maybe they're tired in the morning, so usually those people have low cortisol in the morning, whereas it should be higher, and then they crash in the afternoon, and that's usually because the cortisol drops off, and then at night they're wired, and it's because the cortisol rises. So a lot of people's cortisol rhythms get all off whack, and we can actually restore that by manipulating our light exposure, by not working out too close to bedtime, doing some meditation before bedtime. Oh, that was the other thing. Adaptogenic herbs. That was the word I was looking for. Adaptogenic herbs can really help. So an adaptogen is something that brings things in balance. Whether your cortisol is too high or too low, it can bring it to where it needs to be. So you can use these adaptogenic herbs really to your benefit to help to restore your natural rhythm. Something that I want to say is that you can take magnesium supplements, you can take these adaptogenic herbs, you can supplement with B vitamins, but we want to turn to our diet first and foremost, and that's a topic for a separate video. And then supplements should supplement. In most supplements like these adaptogenic herbs, they're not going to be something that you're going to necessarily go to for a long-term strategy. using them in the beginning while you're trying to get your body back to restore its natural balance can help, but ultimately the goal is to try to let your body live and coexist in balance with minimal use of supplements. You can't get a good idea of if your body needs more of a certain vitamin or mineral from your standard annual checkup. One, because a lot of times the blood levels of these vitamins and minerals don't really tell us a whole lot, because the amount of the vitamin and mineral in your blood doesn't tell us if it's actually in your tissue, metabolically active. And there's other tests, organic acid tests, that are more useful in telling us certain vitamin and mineral levels, and those can all be done, but your doctor is probably not going to have that as an available test to give you. So usually you have to go to a different, like a more specialized doctor. A lot of time functional medicine doctors will be able to do these tests. That could be something really good, the cortisol test, and even like a genetic test to see if you have a genetic predisposition to needing more of a certain vitamin or mineral. I did one recently, and I've become like really fascinated by how certain genes make it so, like, for example, one person might be, A-okay on a vegetarian diet, but the next person might not be, and it all boils down to what our genetic differences is, which we can tell by these genetic tests, and then we can actually manipulate our diet to fit better with what our genes are, which is pretty cool, I think. So I'll leave it there for now. I've got a lot of other topics that I will be discussing, so stay tuned for those.